Fortune versus ability. Those who draw landscapes set themselves on the plain to examine the character of hills and high places, and set themselves on the summits to examine the lowlands. So in order to thoroughly understand the nature of the populace, one must be a prince. And in order to thoroughly to understand the nature of a prince, one must be of the people. I kind of like this quote. Basically just explaining that only the people could possibly be able to explain what they would desire or what an optimal prince would look like, while a prince would only be able to really explain what the common people should act like and what they really should realistically need out of the prince. This is the setup for my initial question for this part of the video, and that is, who was the character in question before gaining power, right? We sort of gave what kind of principality our character's going to rule over, but we don't really know who they were before they became the prince. So that's sort of what this one's about, because Machiavelli likes to put a lot of emphasis on the ideas of fortune and ability, and it's a reoccurring theme throughout the whole book. Fortune refers to being born into privilege, whereas ability refers to gaining it through your own strength and perseverance. Ideally, the optimal ruler would, of course, have both, but more often than not, a ruler acquires their power through one or the other. Both options come with their own pros and cons, of course, and so I thought about this one for a little bit, but I do think there's actually a way to get both out of it, and so I believe that the best way to do this would be for the character to be born into an elite family, but not necessarily the ruler of the land that they're born into, right? So emphasis on the ability. Those who become princes by virtue and of their abilities acquire dominion with difficulty, but maintain with ease. Makes sense when you factor in the idea that they basically proved themselves, right? Unlike we were talking about the hereditary principality, who were born into it, we want someone who did something to prove that they deserve to be the ruler. Any ruler who keeps his state dependent upon mercenaries will never have real peace or security, for they are disorganized, undisciplined, ambitious, and faithless. Brave before their allies, they are cowards before the enemy. Machiavelli repeatedly totes his distrust in mercenaries, constantly reiterating that at best they will betray you, and at worst they will fail you. So again, you want to be able to gain the control with your own ability. You don't want to have to rely on someone else. Emphasis on the auxiliary forces. So that's mercenary forces versus auxiliary forces, which of course would refer to inviting the help of someone like an ally that's bigger than you, right? If they are defeated, he is ruined, and if they are victorious, he becomes their prisoner. Nor was he ever highly esteemed until everyone saw that he was in complete possession of his own forces. The point emphasized here is he's saying that you really can't rely on someone that's bigger than you, because then you just become a hostage of fortune, as he says. So ability as opposed to fortune. Those who rise from private station to become princes by means of good fortune alone do so with scant effort, but remain so with much toil. Obviously makes sense. I've talked about this before, of whether or not you deserve the throne. They obviously earned it. I mean, they didn't earn it. They were born into it, and so therefore there's always going to be a little bit of iffiness of whether or not they deserve it. I've talked about before on how when you're born into the royal family, you'll get if you're ever overthrown, people will still rally on you to get it back. But if you're already in charge, there's always going to be those types of people that don't like that you were just born into it, right? If fortune, fortune is like painting a bullseye on your back, almost, for people to just hate you. Such individuals depend entirely upon the will and the fortune, two fickle and unstable things, of those who have instilled them. They lack both the knowledge and the means to keep the position. Pretty self-explanatory. A prince who relies entirely upon fortune will fail when his fortune changes. He actually has a story in here about these rivers and how, you know, when it rains too much. So, like, normally you can farm and use the river for positive things in your society, in your life. But when it rains too much or when it becomes flooded, then it's the most devastating thing to happen to your people, you know, if you lived on the river, right? And so the idea is that you're completely dependent on the river. Now, as human beings of the time, obviously, that makes sense. But when it comes to, like, society and socially, you don't want to have to rely on other people in order to retain your control over the kingdom or principality in question. You obviously want to earn it or you want to prove that you deserve it with your own ability. So again, it's better to have ability as the ruler, but to gain that ruling force, you need to have enough. It's a lot harder to earn it. The other option, of course, is to obtain it by evil means, not through fortune or ability, but through some sort of trickery. Still, it cannot be called virtue to slay one's fellow citizens, to betray one's friends, to act without fate, without pity, without religion. By such methods one may win dominion, but not glory. He cites men who did just this, and their names had been lost to the history books. Even at the time. We certainly don't talk about them now. I thought this was kind of funny, because he does reference a lot of, like, really big-name people. Like I said, he was very educated on the situation. He's very educated on ruling people. And so he cites a lot of examples, but I didn't recognize a lot of the people he lists off in this option. Not that I'm a history buff or anything. But, like, I mean, he mentions people that, like, you would definitely know normally. But I didn't recognize any of these people. And it's because they obtained it through what he calls evil means or deceit. And you just don't talk about them anymore. You know, they weren't a good king or queen or what. You know, well, at the time, obviously, more male. They weren't a good ruler, is the idea. And I wouldn't even say, like, they're notoriously bad either. They were just, like, so not memorable, I guess, is the idea. His many acts of wickedness do not permit him to be celebrated among men of unusual excellence. Which sort of leads into a really interesting part of this book where he explains proper versus improper use of cruelty. And this is something important to when we get into how we want our character to function. Because I don't want this character to be just like some innocent, like, King Arthur type, like, you know, hero, I guess. I want the ruler to also have a darker side and be willing to make these harsher decisions. But the point is, when do you do it? Proper versus improper use of cruelty. It is to be noted that in seizing a state, one ought to consider all the injuries he will be obliged to inflict, and then proceed to inflict them all at once, so as to avoid frequent repetition of such acts. Benefits, on the other hand, should be bestowed little by little, so as to be more fully savored. Above all, a prince should treat his subjects in such a way that no event, whether good or bad, will cause him to alter his conduct. For punishments inflicted in time of dire necessity come too late to be useful, and the good that one does then will also be fruitless, for it will seem forced by circumstances, and no one will feel any way grateful. So, if you know you're gonna have to hurt some people, just do it right out the gate, is what he's saying. Do it all at once. Don't wait for them to have the like, don't even wait on it, you know? I think his reasoning for this is really funny, but on the other hand, he gives a lot of examples, and you think about it even after that time of you know, since then, it's still pretty consistently like that. You gain a lot of, the common people, of course, gain a lot of hatred if you're constantly, you know, raising taxes, or, you know, harming the lower class, or whatever it is, you know? But if you just do it all at once, and then you just are like, basically, you just do the same thing since then no one's surprised at what you do, so they just leave it, you know? You want the people to almost be more, not necessarily singing, they're not wishing for your downfall in this equation, but they're also not necessarily singing your praises super hardcore. They're very much just like, this is my life now, whatever, because they're just like, don't make it worse. It's not going to get any better, but you might as well not make it any worse. I can't emphasize enough that this book is more about maintaining power than it is about being an actually, like, moral ruler. He talks about morals for sure, but it's almost more to the point of using it as a tool rather than any actual, like, human kindness in this equation. The last thing I want to talk about in this section is sort of about how our character's gonna get into the point where they have enough ability to warrant being in charge. So, like, how did they prepare to become the ruler that they ended up becoming? Because I don't want them to stumble into it either. Again, the King Arthur type, I'm not feeling. I don't want this character to be someone that stumbles into it or is fated for it or whatever. They're someone who worked their asses off to get it. And so it's easier for them to be born into an elite family because then they have the proper training, right? But they can't be the ruler because they still want them to fight to get to the top. That's the whole point of the story, right? He should devote himself to hunting, by means of which he may accustom his body to hardship and at the same time learn the topography of places. Every wise prince should pursue habits similar to these and never submit to idleness in time of peace, but rather endeavor to turn such time to advantage so as to profit from it in adversity. Never sit still. Always be trying to learn something. Whether it be from books or from hunting or, you know, from people, just always be trying to expand your mind when you're growing up, when you're learning to become a prince or a ruler of some kind. That's what I want this character to be. I want this character to be basically groomed for this, almost. So the last section is going to be yeah. I don't really know how to end this, I'll be honest. I should have probably put a better ending into this this script here. I don't know what to draw for this either. I'm not going to leave any of this in. I'm done. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you guys stick around for the final part. If you guys actually like the drawings that I'm doing for this, let me know. I'm not super good, but I do like to draw sometimes, so if we can use that for, like, visuals, that'd be kind of cool, because I don't put my face on here. Anyways, have a good night, and I hope you guys check out more Team Lit videos in the future. Bye-bye.